Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Shattering Glass in Heels. I'm really excited for today's guest. Joining me is Tish Berbaum, one of my good friends who's also a wealth management advisor. Hey, Tish.
Hi, thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, absolutely. Really excited to talk to you. So, yeah, let's just dive right into it a little bit, right? So, just tell the audience a little bit about who you are and your story.
Yeah. So I'm a wealth advisor, and if people don't know what that is I help people manage their money, grow their money, protect their money, and transfer their money to the next generation, creating a legacy. Um, I started in this business as a child that fell in love with investments, and my beginning start was my parents were entrepreneurs, and I went to the bank all the time with them. And at the bank, they had that cute little place where people would wait and go talk in the lobby with someone important. They always looked great. Their outfits were fantastic. And I'm like, I want to know what they're doing. I was very inquisitive. I wanted to know. I was excited. So I sat with them again, grade school. Want to make that really clear. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? And what are you looking at? And they told me about mutual funds. We invest in mutual funds. And I'm like, great. They gave me all of the pamphlets, and I went home. I was super excited. I took that pamphlet, and then my parents got the paper every day, and I started jotting down the funds that they had, and I jotted it every day. And after 60 days, I turned to my mom and I said, Mom, if I purchased these investments, I would have made so much money. And they go, well, that's great. That's the power of investing. And I go, Mom, I want to do this. I want to open up an account. They're like, with what money? We were poor. With what money? I got birthday money. I've got Christmas money. I had all this money. I was a kid, right? They said, fine, go ahead. If it's yours, go ahead. That's fine. We'll let you do that. And long story short, I opened up my first account and I absolutely loved it. I did incredibly well, but this was in the 90s, so everyone did incredibly well. I started investing like a Warren Buffett. So I grew up in Seattle, so think of like Starbucks and Microsoft. Those were my beginning investments. And so I learned really about value investing. I learned about investing in general. And I thought, why doesn't everybody do this? This is fantastic. You never have to work a day of your life, and you get to make money. Your money's growing for you. So that principle I really took to heart. And then I really made that dedication at that time that I was going to say, look, I want financial freedom. I want everyone in my sphere to have financial freedom. And I really put my head down. And even to this day, I went to school, I focused on it. And I knew always that I wanted to be a financial advisor, being able to help people break through some of those barriers to get to where they wanted to be. And it has been an amazing journey ever since. And I've just had this bug and this passion for investing and helping other people with investing.
What a great story to start in grade school and just
Yeah,
have the guts to tell your parents, I'm going to do this. But you're right. The 90s is a great time to be
right.
investing.
Yeah, no one did bad at that
Yeah,
time.
Starbucks, Microsoft, there's not too bad bets at all
Exactly.
in that
Yeah.
time. Yeah. But I love this fact about like you really wanting to help people within your sphere and helping people. So you and I also met because we were at a panel together at the
Yeah.
LA Times. And I just really loved everything that you said about, wanting to help people, not just within your job, but that's within kind of like your DNA of you wanting to help other people and most importantly, kind of like helping women. So talk
Yeah.
to me a little bit about what drives you to help others and particularly other women.
Yeah, I absolutely love what I do. If you can't pick up that passion, but we all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses. And I know there's certain things like I'm never going to change the oil in my car. That's just not my strength. But my strength is helping people through some of their own personal barriers. I think finance in general is a language, and it's a language that not everybody understands. They don't learn it at home. Sometimes they do, but there's all these different elements that they might not know or understand of the consequences. And so, because of that, working through those barriers that people have created maybe for themselves or has just happened naturally, helping people break through that and reaching their goals and their dreams is just really, to me, makes the difference all in the world of what I do, and helping really make big changes. So one more thing is, now I've really noticed I like to sit on boards, and I've found that boards are really what runs a company, right? So if you were able to sit on a board, especially as a woman, and make influential change starting from the top down, you can be a butterfly and create major changes in the way that a company perceives things, create changes for women, for maybe financial gaps on how they're being paid. I mean, all of these situations that we're hearing right now, problems, there's ways that you can give back if you use your superpower. And this is my superpower.
I love that. I love your superpower. So, and a lot of the what also bonds us together is like around how do we break barriers? And you're a phenomenal woman helping other women as well, and in financial services, right? And financial services is not an easy industry,
No.
as well as tech is where I am. Is mostly a very male dominated industry. Talk to me about your journey and your career. What are the barriers that you have faced within your career, and how have you like broken through those?
Yeah, great question. So I was super excited when I graduated, and then the industry, we had to wait. And if you don't remember that, it's the bottom. So I was going to my friends' parties and graduation and being like, oh, I'm going to be a financial advisor. And everyone's like, get out, walk out, don't turn around. Their portfolios may have been cut in half when they're their own personal, and they were just really emotionally scarred at that moment. And so things like that, that's a moment, right? That I have always had to look at a situation and say, hey, how am I going to go to the next level no matter what? So I took on a job that was really looked at in the industry as maybe like the bottom, right? But I worked really hard and I really worked my way up. But also at that same time, I made sure that I also changed different companies, and I took opportunities that were presented to me and made shifts and changes. Sometimes people get really comfortable in their roles and then they don't move, and then they don't challenge themselves or allow themselves to make more money, because sometimes shifting or renegotiating compensation can make a major shift. And I'm not even talking about when I would go to these events or I would go and apply to different roles. It's a male dominated industry. So when I would go, maybe like 3% of these rooms were, maybe to a conference, was filled with men. And, um, a small percent, definitely less than 10%, was women, and majority of them were older. And so nothing wrong with that, but I was definitely the youngest woman in the room. And I'm going to tell you, even when you take that back to a client base, when you're competing against these people to get clients, you have to work twice as hard. You have to be smarter than the other guys, and you have to be two steps ahead of them in order for you to win that business. So it's really being strong, focused, and dedicated, and not giving up no matter what. Really staying focused to really, I feel, to really walk through some of these really difficult but everyday situations.
No, I hear you. I think one of the things being in male dominated industries, a lot of my mentors and sponsors were men, versus
Mhm.
women. I would think that that would be the same with you.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about some of your mentors and sponsors and how, kind of, you know, critical that, what does that relationship look like also being a woman, and, how has that shaped you as well?
100%. Working with other people has really been the pillar for my success. So I have worked and I've actually partnered up with the most fundamental, amazing people in our industry. And I found mentorship to be super important, and multiple people in my area. And I would look to see, who is that person who I want to be? What kind of business do they have? What kind of clients do they have? What kind of practice do they have? And then I would connect with them and I would find those relationships. And some I would work with and I would bond a relationship of a working relationship. And some I would check in and saying, hey, am I on track? And I know that they talk about mentorship along the way all the time, but some of them have been male and some of them have been female. And I have learned so many amazing things along the way. And even if I've hit a point that, you know what, it doesn't make sense for me to stay at that same place anymore, I I really take a moment back of gratitude of what I've learned along the way. I mean, even to this day, someone I worked with 6 to 8 years ago, I still utilize the processes that I learned, the procedures that I learned, the way I communicate with people using soft communication versus maybe abrasive, and being able to connect with people. And little pieces like that you learn along the way is really being vulnerable, but also being open. And maybe I was, let's call it, maybe I thought that I was smart, but knowing that you can learn from these other people and really glean from them is just really, you can be a sponge at any point in your career. Even today, I'm still a sponge. There's more things that I can learn, the better you'll be.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about female rivalry at our panel and the realities of that. And it's just so refreshing to be among someone like you, where that's not how we're coded. That's not our DNA at all. And we're really truly about, helping others and helping women. So want to talk a little bit about shift gears, right? You advise a lot of really successful women and people from all different backgrounds. And let's just talk about the corporate woman for a second, right? This is
Okay.
kind of where we're at. What do you think are the barriers that you're seeing, for us corporate women or women, in the workforce, um, around just really being understanding kind of financial literacy and our wealth? What do you think are some of those barriers?
Wow. Well, you definitely said something that's super important that I reach with women all the time. So I'm gonna say is if they've made the cut, right, that means that they've continued to fight for staying with their career and they're in the industry. A lot of times there's sacrifice, right? So I'm gonna personally say something I sacrifice right now that I really need to get better with is balance and taking care of myself. So the one thing that I'm constantly reminded is I need to make sure that I'm still doing the things that make me super happy, and going to yoga because it makes me feel good, going on walks on the beach because it makes me feel good, going and taking care of the things that make Tish feel great so my bucket is full so then I can continue to pour and give to other people. A lot of women that work really hard and you're grinding all the time, you forget about yourself. You can lose sleep because we're working all crazy hours, right? Projects, deadlines. You're successful because you have dedication and focus and determination, but it doesn't mean you have to do everything. So, really understanding maybe balance or hiring the team you can train to really be able to empower them to help support you so you can be your best self and do the things that you do best and help let them support you. Another thing that I see all the time is really people struggle with negotiation and understanding their value and their worth. So when you're in a role and you're going against someone else in your role and you're competing for this, I don't always see women negotiate a higher compensation. Like, do your research, make sure you've done your general, research of what that looks like. Also, don't be afraid to be firm and say no and renegotiate. Like, talk about potential additional benefits that you can get. And don't be afraid to go to a competitor if that doesn't work for you. So things like that. And one more point that's kind of like it's for me is kind of shared also is if you make it. What I mean by that is a lot of times after people graduate, and there was a Census Bureau report that came out, like I think in 2019, I believe, that basically said like 56% of women that graduate with a bachelor's degree that end up having children stay in the workforce. So if you're there, you it's hard to stay there. But then you have this other element of, like, I'm going to call it mommy guilt because I have the mommy guilt, right? But I miss out on some really important things that I know that, if I'm working full time and I'm comparing myself to maybe a mom that's a stay-at-home mom, then it's really hard to be able to make sure that I'm doing it all. And the answer is I'm not doing it all. I'm really not. There's moments that, again, yesterday, another mom sent me a photo of of my son doing a presentation that he went around the school in their like annual event that they do a big presentation, and I got a video of it from another mom. I wasn't able to go. My husband wasn't able to go. We do the best that we can. We're there 100% when we're there. But when we're home, I also unplug and make sure that I'm mom, and I make sure that those moments are really special. And it allows me to be when I'm in work to really focus and make that time very valuable, because I know I have to get done soon so I can also prioritize the other things that are important in my life.
Gosh, you said a lot there. One's like taking care of yourself. The second
Yeah.
is just really kind of like negotiating for what you're worth. And then we'll dive
Yeah.
into the mommy guilt and the balance a little bit.
Okay.
But I love the idea of like, really saying taking time for yourself. You're right. We don't take as much time for ourselves. Like I'm in a global role and I'm everywhere. And it's
Right.
really hard to find those pockets and moments sometimes to take care of yourself. And sometimes from a productivity perspective, because I travel so much, for me, being on airplanes has always been about productivity and not losing productivity. That
Yeah.
the times that I'm totally knocked out on a plane or decide when I'm going to watch a movie, like I feel slightly guilty, but
Yeah.
it's kind of what you need to kind of reset and reprocess. But let's dive a little bit to the second piece about negotiating what you're worth, because I
Okay.
think this is a really, really important piece around women. You're right. Most women do not negotiate, or that they're willing just to take the first offer or feel guilty about negotiating. I had a friend who's um, in a C-suite executive role, and she said, "Oh, I'm considering this other role. The salary is a little bit less.
Yeah.
The salary is okay, is comparable, but the benefits are not the same as the benefits that I'm getting now." And I was like, and I said, "Why wouldn't you negotiate for a higher salary, right, to cover the costs and the difference that you're not getting from, a health benefit? Like that's still your total." They don't understand that total compensation, a total package. They're just looking at it in terms of just salary and things that benefits is just like an extra.
Yep.
What do you think it is about women not wanting to negotiate or not understanding what they're worth? Is that, where do you see that, right, coming from?
I There could be like cultural limitations. I think it goes back to confidence. A lot of times women don't even apply for a job unless they feel like they've hit, 8 out of 10 of the criteria, versus a man might be 6 out of 10. That's not a fact, by the way. That's just kind of a range. So just that point alone is they don't have the confidence unless they feel like they're 100% understanding of it. And maybe they're overqualified at that point. So maybe the confidence. And I would also say maybe they feeling like their self worth. Maybe they don't feel that value there. And that's an internal, or they don't feel like they're worthy. I hear that from really successful executives that are making incredible compensation. They almost feel guilty, right? Like, if I'm taking this benefit away, the revenues that they're bringing in, I mean, maybe there's not another employee that's being brought on. Like there's sacrifices there. They may not feel the worthiness, or just know how to negotiate, right? Where I feel like women just negotiate less altogether. So they might not think about the benefits and how that can really increase their overall compensation altogether.
Yeah, no, I agree. Even some of my circle of friends who are, successful corporate executives, it shocks me sometimes to like really hear them say, I have one friend who's a doctor, a very successful doctor. She takes her paycheck and then she's just like gives it to her husband. And I was like, did you ever like when she's in negotiating process? Because I'm not really sure. My husband knows those details. And it kind of dawns on me, right? And you and I talked a little bit about this, right?
Yeah.
The fact that women, it wasn't that long ago really when women couldn't open their own bank accounts or get a loan without some sponsorship or guardianship from a male. And I'm
Yeah.
just really wondering, right, even just from my immediate generation, how much of this financial literacy is not really out there, and how much more education do we need to do? You're in the driver's seat. You've been, exposed to this since your grade school. This is exactly what you know, and you probably know more than most women out there of financial literacy. What are you seeing with clients, particularly women, around just financial literacy? Is that an area where we really need to focus in on and improve?
100%. 100%. I mean, I have an amazing business owner that's a client, makes ridiculous amount of revenue from her company, and she's like, "Itish, can you like tell me how to read my balance sheet that they're sending over from my bookkeeper and my accountant. I'd like to understand what I'm looking at. I know at the end of the day the numbers I'm green, right? She's making a ton of money, but she doesn't understand what she's looking at. And that's a great example of how people we perceive you understand everything because you are maybe the leader, the person at the helm. But a lot of financial decisions, people don't necessarily understand or understand the consequences. So they
Yeah.
become afraid to make that decision because they just don't know. So, to answer your overall question, I think there's people would really thrive on understanding more of the basics. And here's a perfect, I would say, my proof to that is I will put out sophisticated things on social media. People might like it, probably I'll get a couple likes, but when I put out some very basic tools, tips, and ways to reach those in a very simple way, my social media has 3 or 4 or 5 times the amount of movement when I actually do that. So what that tells me is people are hungry for really basic knowledge to help them make everyday decisions. And I'm talking across every economic situation of where you are. People need that. And the schools are impacted. They're not getting it in the schools today, what they used to get. And so if they're not getting it at home, and even affluent families, they're really not getting it. They might be a product of it, but they don't understand it. So unless you're getting grit to learn it every day as life happens to you and you find out the hard way, you might not know. Does that make sense? So yes,
No,
I think people
totally
need more
makes
education.
sense. I think you're right. It's 100% important because financial literacy and financial freedom is the best for women, for us to continue to be empowered and be independent. And that's a really important aspect of it. And,
Yeah.
I know I'm guilty as well as an executive. Like, actually not guilty. I would say I'm just tactful enough to keep myself around really smart people who understand the numbers a little bit deeper than myself and who provide me with really great advice. It's why people like you
Yeah,
to give me the advice.
that's right.
What I'm really good at is, I understand my skill. I'm really good at spending money to get return on investment back, but I'm really good at spending.
Right,
So, but
right.
I like someone telling me like, okay, you're really great at spending, but Christine, here's how much you can spend and that's it, right? Like
Yeah.
that's an important, so giving me my limits is important for me, and getting that advice um, from people is also really, really important because, as I said, I'm really good at spending, but I'm also getting good at spending the money to get the return on investment back. But,
Right.
being able to justify then having that conversation is also important. So, but that's just me. But yeah, no surprise.
You're
I'm
not
guilty.
alone. You're not alone. It's so many people feel the exact same way,
Yeah.
and that's fine. And maybe even just to add one little tip to that is instead of worrying about someone giving you a limit, because
Yeah.
that's kind of like, well, I don't want to
Totally.
be
Yeah.
told I can't do anything, and I don't get inspired by that. But creating a habit of being like just putting a little bit aside towards something that's really important to you,
Yeah.
that's inspiration for
It's true.
yourself, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. No, that's absolutely important. Yeah, no. Well, I want to go back into the third point that you had, which is the
Okay.
mommy guilt.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
just love the fact that you said, okay, about balance and the fact that like have it all figured out, and just really coming in and say, no, you don't. So because so many women are just, trying to figure it out. For me, it's like I don't see life anymore as like life versus, work, and finding that balance. I feel like it's like a life continuum, and it's a little bit more fluid than that,
Yeah.
that things kind of weave in together. And for me, it's like waking up for work and waking up for life is waking up with purpose. And that's how I see it. Right.
Yeah.
And so you're right. There are times where, you don't have the bandwidth, the capacity to be able to do it all, or be able to drive purpose at that exact moment. When that, someone needs, like to your point, like with your son and his presentation, you might not be there. But I would just start to think that, in the larger scheme of things, when you actually, look back, that there are other values that your son is actually getting from seeing his mom work and be successful and helping others. And so
Yeah.
I think that that's really, really awesome. As other people like listen to this, right, and you hear a lot of people with that mom guilt, or just, I also hear a lot of younger women who are terrified to go in pregnancy leave. right?
Yeah.
And what that
Yeah.
means from a term. Like, what
Right.
advice would you give a lot of those women who are really thinking through about, just the next step in their career, next step in their families, or just really trying to figure out the balance? Like, how do you navigate that with your husband and with your kids?
Yeah. So, a couple things. One, I shared that when we were on the panel, that I had the opportunity, my husband saying, "Hey, great, you want to be a stay-at-home mom," which is, by the way, an amazing opportunity that I had. And I didn't want to let go of me being my passion of being able to help other people. It's really important. And maybe my identity was connected to that.
Yeah.
Also is I didn't want to be a person that I had to be subject to if we ever were divorced later on in life, that wouldn't be able to support myself or get back into an industry and start at the bottom and then recreate myself. That was my own personal choice, but that was also part of it, right? I wanted to always be independent but connected. So that being said, is there's always these choices that you're making along the way. But what I realized was, you know, back in the time it was as a 9 to 5 job, right? And so I knew there's things that I need in my life that are work life balance. Like, I don't like working on Fridays if I have to. I will work on Fridays if I want to, which means I really end up working almost every Friday. But I do create really like boundaries for myself. And me going into deciding to have children, I didn't want to work the traditional 9 to 5 and then drive there and then get home and then never see my children. I wanted to have different hours. Now, let me tell you, I probably worked twice as much personally, but I recreated what I wanted. I renegotiated. And they're like, hey, you can bring your kids in. Well, that didn't work because having a crying kid in the background in like a financial setting, like it was not going to work. I think I tried that one time and that didn't work at all. So, working from home at that time, recreating it, I brought in a nanny in my house, and then I was there to be able to be there for during fundamental times. But then I was still able to really continue doing what I did, and I kept my career going. I was able to be a mom, but I recreated the rules and I renegotiated and I negotiated, and I didn't negotiate for a lower compensation. I want to be super clear. I negotiated for a higher compensation, more flexibility. And so that was a negotiation skill at that time. But then I realized, once they hit me to the hey, no matter what, we now need you to do this and work full time and kind of follow our path. I just said that this isn't going to work for me and my long-term goals. And I shifted and I ended up going to a new location and working somewhere else that would allow me to continue that path of being able to do both. I am an amazing, successful prodigy because of that. And I did not let anyone tell me, hey, Tish, you need to work 9 to 5 and these are the rules. I probably, like I said in the beginning, worked more hours,
Yeah.
but I had to recreate it. So don't be afraid to recreate it. Now, and after COVID, people are like, there's work life balance. People are working from home all the time. I mean, what a great opportunity. But I think if you can really stay focused on what's important to you, don't give up on that determination. Find a will, there's a way, recreate it. And I say this over and over again, but I think it's you have experiences this in your workplace too. If it's not there, find it, create
Yeah.
it, make the job that you want, create
Yeah.
the job.
No, absolutely. And I love that dimension, right? It's the dimension of not just like negotiating for what you're worth in terms of monetary compensation, but what it is that you need to be successful to do the job, which is the flexible arrangements that you need
Yeah.
to be successful as a mother, because you personally successful is also you being professionally successful. And and
Yeah.
and and that's really, really important. And an employer who values you,
Yeah.
not just the contributions that you bring, values you as a person, and should be willing to support that. So
Yeah.
that's definitely, an amazing
I,
thing.
I have a story, if that's okay, if I have one more
Go
second on
ahead.
this. So I had a mom at the same time that we were great friends. Now is a great client, and she had her baby around the same time I did. She went back to work, when she went back to work, she was given papers to leave and she got fired after maternity. Again, against the law for them to do it. And the best part is
Right.
her husband was a labor attorney. But we're gonna just go there. There was no lawsuits done. No one took any type of legal action, but it made her really go back to what's important to her. And she reshifted, went to their competitor and made twice as much, had more flexibility, and had the opportunity she wanted. And it was like I should have done this a long time ago moment. And so sometimes the way that we think it's going to be isn't necessarily the right path of what you need. And so it ended up working out. So don't be afraid. We're never always ready. It's never going to be perfect. You kind of have to just figure it out as you go and be comfortable with being uncomfortable with certain situations.
That's really a great insight and advice. Um, did you have any other advice that you wanted for other listeners to, like, particularly the audience here is like the next generation of workers who are trying to rise up the corporate ladder and running through kind of the barriers? What advice would else other advice that you may have to give to them as they're listening to this?
So I would say be humble, be willing to learn along the way. You might not know it all, and don't expect to be at the top of the ladder. It takes a lot of time to get there, and hard work and determination. If you know what you want, get a great group of mentors in your life or peers in your life and figure out what you need or how he complements you, and these other people can help guide you, and have people surrounding you that believe in you and that are not going to tear you down. There's so many people out there that are going to tear you down all day long. And if you can just lean into the people that just truly love you for who you are and just value you and your relationship and understand all the amazing things that you bring to the table and can help encourage that, and don't be afraid to change, be willing to negotiate, go in and ask for more. Also, don't be afraid to shift, or also lean in and take it as an opportunity. If people are giving you feedback, open up and saying, great, this is a way that I can change to make myself so much better. And maybe the opportunities will open up for more. Network, know great people, because you never know who you're going to run into and what door they're going to open for you. And if you lean into a goal and a dream and a determination, the sky is the limit. And maybe I'm a dreamer, but I'm a dreamer that reaches my goals, and I encourage my clients to really reach their goals. And it's one step at a time. Don't be don't rush for the finish line. Enjoy the journey. It's always hard to say, but I feel like those things are fundamental. And then it's never too late to start investing and reaching out to someone to get help along the way. A lot of times people feel like financial advisors like myself are out of reach. Like, oh, I'll do that when I have a lot more money. No, there's so many amazing people out there that you can get help with, even at your local bank that you can go to and you're just starting. They can help advise you on just getting going. Or if you're a business owner and just starting, there's so many great, valuable things that you can do to help you get to the next level by reaching out to like a financial advisor or creating your team of people in your network in your life to get you there. So, I mean, I feel like those are the things that are super important to me, that are kind of guidelines to the everyday life that I live.
Well, thank you so much. I think that's super valuable. I had one more question, and it's a fun
Okay.
question. I
Okay.
end all my podcasts this way, and you'll love
Perfect.
this question. What's your favorite shoe or memorable shoe, and why?
Oh man. I have so many shoes.
I know.
So, I'm really obsessed with Valentino right now. So I found a pair that I like, and it is my guilty pleasure. And I have the same shoe in multiple colors, and so it is a way that I can express myself. I feel powerful. I feel inspired. They look beautiful on my feet. I feel like I am put together, and it's my way of saying thank you to myself of being able to work really, really hard and that I'm able to walk into a room and I feel so confident. So confidence is an amazing gift. And if you can, I'm not a giant fan of being completely frivolous, but I do love shoes. So great question.
We all had that in common when we met for sure. It was
Oh,
a good shoe
so good.
conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Tish, for your time and for stopping on my podcast, and
So
truly
great.
appreciate it.
Thank you
Awesome.
for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to my podcast. I hope this has inspired you to continue the fight for equality, challenge stereotypes, and lift as we climb. We'd love to hear from you. Amplify the conversation on social media, following @DuquesseCD. For more information about me and my Amazon best-selling book, Walking in My Shoes, Shattering Glass Ceilings in Corporate America, check out DuquesseCD.com.